Hello, my name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy sister, and we're reading Saturnastra Chalon. This was chapter 5, right?
Yeah.
Lady Suzan narrowed her eyes in an attempt to recognize Chalon, and after rattling her memory a bit, she remembered seeing a traveling merchant girl not so long ago who had ordered about 70 hats of different sizes and designs. And then she said slowly, "Oh yes, now I remember. My apologies. All paying customers are welcome, especially the ones who prepay." And it was not often that Lady Suzan received money beforehand for her commissions, and it was in part due to a little hat fiasco that had occurred 2 years ago, and the day before the promised delivery, her baby Zeus had crawled into her workstation and smeared hundreds of hats with ink. And ever since then, Lady Suzan had lost the trust she had once placed on her daughter, and they were idle and good for nothing as far as she was concerned. And for that reason, Lady Suzan could not understand, and she felt a slight headache. And Chalon gave her a look of concern when he saw Lady Suzan rubbing her temple. And she then went to her daughter, Sophia, and handed her a receipt without saying a word. And Chalon heard the sound of Lady Suzan's heels as she went upstairs, and Sophia too followed the sound of her mother's footsteps. And Zeus, who was going through a clingy phase, quickly followed after his mother. And after counting the exact number of footsteps, Sophia breathed a sigh of relief. And her mother had made it to the bed, and it was not often but her mother would get spells of sudden fatigue. And they were usually preluded by a throbbing pain on the forehead. And Chalon was somewhat keen on throwing Lady Suzan a bone, but since his healing peg was feeble, he chose just to make a mental note of it. And if anything, there was quite a number of healers in society. And there was always his sister Melina, who used to make rounds in the city. Following a few minutes of awkward silence, Sophia said, "So just stay here and I will bring forth your order." And after saying this, Sophia went downstairs to fetch the hats, and they were all inside 5 tan leather boxes. And the hats themselves were not too large. Chalon took each leather box one by one, and he placed them under his sleeve. Sophia looked to the side and commented, "That is a neat trick." Chalon shrugged his shoulder, and then he mouthed the word, "Meh." Why didn't he say meh? With this, he had finished all of his errands in the city of society. Time 13:34. It was close to noon when Chalon started running back to the camp, and he had his rectum, for lack of a better word, clenched as he ran. And he was desperately trying to make his way towards a familiar pot, and a place where he felt safe and secure enough to free himself of his heavy burden. And along the way, some humans in the street got in his way, which he rushed aside with no moderation in strength. And he remembered himself when he made a little girl cry when he thoughtlessly bumped into her. And he had not seen her, and he felt guilty about it, and in the end he jumped, and then he landed back in camp. And naturally this caused quite a commotion among the people of society who had seen him jump, but not his family. And he ran through the camp, and he found his favorite spot being used by another. And he pushed him aside, and the person said, "Chalon, I'm not finished, geez, at least let me clean myself." And he was about to protest more, but Chalon had already brought out his favorite pot, and he had assumed position. And he breathed a sigh of relief after dropping like 5 pounds in less than 2 minutes. And after concluding his business, Chalon removed his garments, and he sent them to another dimension to get them clean. And with a towel as his only source of clothing, he proceeded to take a bath to clean himself completely. I do the same thing too. It is a little hygiene habit that became quite commonplace here in our world, and most people would just be satisfied to just clean the affected area, but not us. It is always more efficient to just clean everything just to be safe. The person Chalon had pushed aside in order to exhaust himself was a local albino of the clan, and he was not related to the family in any way. Still, all successful artists feature an albino fellow, so Harold had decided to buy one. The albino fellow was technically a slave, and he had never received his freedom papers from Harold, who did not know he had to prepare some, and he thought that his word was enough to offer the man his freedom. And Harold had said to his family that the albino Sean Spooner was now a free man, and that he should be treated as such. And after verbally giving him his freedom, Sean decided to travel along with Harold and his merry clan. And as for the last name Spooner, it was often that slaves did not have a family name, and when they were freed, they were given a last name, and the name Spooner was given to him by Chalon. And Sean accepted the last name because spoon was one of the few words he could actually spell correctly. And albinism was a tricky subject in the kingdom of Veragero. And just 500 years ago, it was common for albinos to be killed and their bodies be sold to magic users as spell components. And when the Tower of Subero started expanding its powers, the barbaric practices were suppressed, and most books related to albinos related magic were burned, and the albino hunts ended for good 300 years ago thanks to Bersamet's rule of law. And under his mandate, all species of all colors, who were not slaves, of course, were treated just like any other fellow. And though whenever one of those forbidden blood magic books surfaced, it often spelled trouble for the albino community. And Sean thought of this and many other things while he tried once again to finish his business, and he saw Chalon bathing with a little bit of envy. And Chalon could bathe out there in the open if he wanted to, while he has to sit there dressed like a dark elf with a mask and a large hat and gloves and a cape, which was about any necessity to keep him safe from the sun. And in the old days he would have minded such sun sores, but Chalon had warned him about skin cancer, and now that was all he could think about whenever he had an inch of his skin exposed. It's like, that's what he thought about something, that's what I can think about. You know when somebody tells you funny honest and then that because you become hyper obsessed with it? Mm-hmm. Like, I cannot get sick, I cannot get sick type of neurosis. Time, bro?
70 minutes.
At the time, Sean had only been traveling with the merchants for about 2 years, and despite the length of time, he imagined that Chalon was picking on him all the time. And this bathroom incident was just one of the many little scrapes he had with Chalon, and the main issue was that he got in the way of Chalon's happy little routine. And Chalon's family already knew his behavior pattern, and so they knew when and where to expect him in order to avoid any bit of tension. And Harold was a man who enjoyed peace and quiet, and anything that caused even the slightest bit of stress was discouraged. And so this was part of the reason why Sean never confronted Chalon in these types of uncomfortable situations. And in the meantime, Chalon was enjoying his little mid-afternoon bath, and on this particular day, the weather was fair. And the sun burned strongly, but not too strong. It was just right. Chalon did not linger too much on his libations. It lasted less than 7 minutes, and for the afternoon, Chalon decided to put on his necromancer garb. He no longer needed to run errands, and so he put on what he called his work uniform. And when he was dressed, he visited 2 trailers, and the first belonged to his cousin Kay. And the window had about 4 potted roses, and they had been trimmed every so often to make it easy to open the small window. And Chalon opened the door, and he placed on a small cart the boxes of hats that Kay had ordered. The store Chalon took to one of the supply carts, and when the delivery concluded, he finally sat down in the communal table to wait for his meal. And right on cue, Esther dropped her sewing needle and the garment she was currently working on, and she left her trailer and made her way towards the dining area, and around her people were already cooking their own meals. And lunch was the only meal that the family group could not synchronize, and as such each person prepared their own meals before getting back to work. And Chalon was one of the few douches who did not follow in suit, and this was in part because Esther would spoil him from time to time. And Chalon's meal, she baked him some baby red potatoes, yellow onions, a green bell pepper, 3 green onions, 2 sliced sausages with some cooking oil. And it also came with 2 fried eggs, and these he had with mineral water. Since he liked his drinks cold, the moment he touched the glass, he lowered the temperature of his drink to his gusto. And he had gotten a lot of practice with a simple trick over the years, and the first time he tried it in this world, he shattered the glass. And ever since then, he had been a little bit more deliberate with his stance, despite the fact that he wanted to enjoy his meal. Oh yeah, because since he lowered the temperature too much on the glass too quickly, just burst it out, because I think when ice freezes, the water expands and becomes you just try to put something that's crystal in the refrigerator, and then it always explodes. Food was one of the few things Chalon enjoyed in his life, and at the time he pondered on eating more than what he should, but he did not want to devour all of the supplies of his family group. Esther did know that her adopted son was a heavy eater, and it was for this reason she always served him more food than what was normally allowed. And the first thing Chalon tackled were the potatoes, and they were seasoned just the way he liked, with oregano, paprika, thyme, sea salt, and garlic powder. And seasoning was one of the few luxuries that this merchant clan enjoyed, and some of the spices were pretty hard to get, like paprika, peppers, saffron, and cinnamon. And cinnamon was the rarest spice in the kingdom, and the tree that produced the cinnamon was found in the high mountains behind Aragon, and access to it was severely restricted by the ebbs and flows of the river born from the mountaintop, and efforts have been made recently to grow cinnamon verum in the lower lands, and it was a work in progress in many cities, including Sassari. And while Chalon munched on his potato, he absent-mindedly poked the eggs on his table with his fork, and eventually he pulled one up and he bit halfway before setting it down on his plate, and he blinked twice when he noticed a fellow sitting before him, and it was common for merchants to temporarily travel with them. And the man sitting before Chalon had a brown traveling coat, green attire, and a black feather hat. And this light acknowledgement of the traveler only lasted for a second, and Chalon then lowered his eyes to return to eating his food, and the man seemed eager to strike up a conversation, and he was intrigued by Chalon's black robes. Black was an expensive dye, and those who wore it did it to show off how rich and successful they were. The subtle flower patterns on the hood and the sleeves were made of golden thread, and the leather sash going from his shoulder to his waist hid the necromancy bells, and it was attached to the belt which held a rune sword, and on his hand Chalon wore 3 golden rings, 2 on the pinkies and 1 in the middle finger of his left hand. And the necromancy bells themselves did not have any true pattern. They were designed to entrance the magic user, to change their perception of reality. The deeper the tone, the more in tune they were with death world. And the trance could be triggered in any other type of way, and Chalon really did not need the bells, and many a times he forgot he wore them, and the local necromancers did not always use bells. Some used coins, and others bones, and others whistles. And this segregation was in part due to the fact that there was not a uniform school of necromancy. It was allowed in the magic community, but it was not encouraged either. It was one of those do-it-at-your-own-risk type of magical ventures. As for the rune blade, it was just a stylistic choice, and Chalon had many spells and abilities that were better than a sword. Still, it was useful for those rare moments when he was drawing a blank. And when all else fails, one could always hack away your problems. And Chalon stabbed the axe with a sword before finally bringing one to his mouth, and he was lost in thought, and he was trying to remember something that he could not, and the surface memories were usually easy picking, and it was those imperceptible thoughts, the elusive types, that proved the hardest to pinpoint them. And they were like a river you are trying to pull out with a spoonful by spoonful, and it is possible given enough time, but by the time you acquire the missing thought, it ends up being something pointless and trivial. And the merchant opened his mouth to ask his question, but before he did, Chalon's face lit up, and he had one of those eureka expressions. He had managed to remember what he had been struggling to pin down all morning, and this effort to remember came about from time to time, and it was more of a feeling. And when he remembered completely, Chalon frowned again, and it was what came afterwards that left a sour taste in his mouth, or maybe it was the overspiced potatoes. Either way, Chalon ate quickly this time, and he got up before the merchant could detain him. Time, bro?
10 minutes.
Normally, Chalon would have made a round about camp to see if his help was required for anything. Instead, he went to his trailer, and he closed all the windows and the main door, and he ordered a black curtain to put, and he removed the curtain from the mirror nightstand he had, and he lighted a candle before him. And to get himself in a trance, he opened his belt, and he took out the fattest belt, and he began to perceive many things around him, like lurkers, the biters, the sniffers, and the kickers. These are just nicknames for the things that we do not know what they are. We just describe their behavior and put them together in a group. the lurkers, the biters, the sniffers, the kickers.
Who are the sniffers?
just things in the dark that sniff you.
I have questions now.
It's like creepy crawlies in the dark recesses of magic, and then they don't know what they are, so they just name it based on what they do to you while you're trying to do your necromancy thing in peace. Their elusive, intangible nature makes them a little bit hard to analyze. Not that it matters much in the grand scheme of things, and these beings live in a different plane of existence, and they have no significant effect on our real world, with the notable exception of the sleepers. And there was another type of being that belonged to that plane which was relevant, and Chalon was trying to make contact with a diviner. And while the sleepers did not want to have anything to do with the real world, the diviners wanted to perceive everything and everyone in the real world without risking their hide. And the more ancient the diviner, the better. Still, ancient diviners were rare because many turned into sleepers. And for the moment there was one that still cared about the fate of the world, and he answered to the sound of the crumbling dry rose petals. And with his hand, Chalon opened the drawer, and he started removing from there the rose petals he had for this specific summoning. And darkness grew around him, and he could no longer perceive the room or the chair he was sitting on, and there was only a large, ever-glowing candle. And soon all the lights started dancing around him, and the fine stained glass windows were noticeable on the sky above. And if there was walls, Chalon could not touch them, and one could walk into infinity on either direction, and the distance between the person and the walls would never be breached. And Chalon rose and took a step, and the step was echoed on the empty hallways of infinity. And the sound was familiar to the cracking ice, or when a person steps on snow. Instead of walking, Chalon waited, and after a moment, or an eternity, a strange creature appeared before him. And he had a snake-like body with 3 humanoid arms protruding from the chest, and each hand had 3 skinny, bony fingers, and the body was icky, like the one of an eel. And the face, if you can even call it that, had 4 sets of eyes, 1 large one and 3 small dot ones, and the snout protruded down as if it had no cartilage, and it was like an elephant appendage with suckers like the one of a squid, and the mouth was like that of a humpback whale, but only that it opened vertically instead of horizontally, and the wings were formed by rows of purple whiskers, and the tail was long and wide, with words like those of a frog, and the hands gesticulated in the air, and Chalon responded in kind. Like what I just described as spoken sign language. Through many encounters, the bear had developed a type of sign language, and the creature said, "What seems to be the trouble?" "Samok, I need you to interpret a dream," said Chalon with sign language. "Go on," said Samok. Samok was phonetically the closest one could get to the sound the creature made when it introduced itself. Though in his strange language, the creature was just saying hello. Like, he thinks that the creature is called Samok, but that was just the creature saying in his native tongue, hello. It started a bit like a crescent dream, and I was an angelic-looking fellow with a human lover and a collage fellow. And whenever the angel pretended to be human, his lover was nice and pleasant, but when he was his real self, his lover was cold and distant. And that always bothered the angel fellow, and for both personalities were one and the same. So the dream was just normal stuff from going to school, dates, jobs, and other nonsense, and the dream changed to something rather unpleasant, and I was a woman who gave birth to 3 babies. And the 2 looked normal, but one was like a bony old woman who was slowly withering away, decaying. And I was quite upset that the doctor had shown me the other baby. And why modify me with the other baby if I had 2 that were alive and well? And there was no need for me to know the other child, so why did I dream this? And is this a prophecy type of dream? And does it relate to the future or the past? Because I feel that it is a prophetic dream. And I usually remember those types of dreams, said Chalon with his hands. Time, bro?
5 minutes, 30 seconds.
The creature folded his arms, and he rested his head on a skinny hand in the middle. And after thinking a lot, Samok said, "This dream was dreamt before by your mother. This first dream is just a standard dream fulfillment. She wanted a city show she was watching to focus on 2 different characters. And as for the second, it was a side effect of something she had seen on the internet." "The internet, huh? That's archaic," said Chalon, laughing. "The point is that the dream has to do with her birthing anxiety, and it is part of the reason why she avoided intimacy back when she was a being of flesh and blood," explained Samok. "And there was some things that never changed," said Chalon, and in the end he said to Samok with his own voice, "Thank you, my friend." The creature emitted a strange guttural sound in response, and Chalon blinked twice, and he was back in his trailer. And he blew out the candle, and he left the trailer, and he squinted his eyes a bit as he tried to get used to the sunlight again. And it did not take long to consider that the entire incident only took 10 minutes to conclude. And when one is in a trance, the perception of time is altered. Time?
4 minutes, 30 seconds.
After getting used to the sunlight, Chalon went to look at the notice board, and when Harold was younger, he was a mercenary, and he even belonged to a little guild, and due to his guild days, he had gotten into the habit of putting up a little notice board for his family to put a task that required a little extra helping hand. And Chalon picked the first paper on top of the board without bothering to read it. And after walking a pace, he read it over the top, and the message read, "Need sparring partner for tonight's mock fight, and contact Sean for further details." And Chalon left with the note in hand, and he found Sean practicing with a dummy with a makeshift stage. And it was on the grass, and the curtain was held by two wooden beams. And the floor was made of wood, and it was formed by connected pieces of large planks, about 20 in total. Sean stopped his practice when he heard the wood groan, and he echoed that groan when he saw that it was Chalon. Alright, so let's just leave it here. Bye-bye.